For centuries, humanity watched the stars in silence. Long before they ever left their own solar system, they had already detected the signals: fractured transmissions, bursts of coded energy, distant echoes of something vast and organized, not random, not natural. War. When humanity finally developed faster than light travel, they stepped into a galaxy already shaped by conflict. Entire regions burned in slow-motion warfare between species older, stronger, and far more advanced than anything humans had ever imagined. Empires rose and collapsed over millennia. Alliances shifted like sand. Peace, when it existed, was only temporary, fragile pauses between inevitable violence. And humanity chose to stay out of it. They built their colonies quietly, far from major conflict zones. Their ships were fast, but lightly armed. Their technology advanced steadily, but never aggressively. They traded, observed, learned, but never interfered. To the rest of the galaxy, humans became something unusual, neutral. Some called them cowards, others called them wise, most simply ignored them. There were rumors, of course, quiet whispers that humans were not as defenseless as they appeared, that their restraint was a choice, not a limitation. But in a galaxy overflowing with power, rumors meant little without proof. So the wars continued, and humanity remained on the sidelines. Until everything changed. It began with a species known as the Elari. They were small, fragile by galactic standards, and technologically modest. Their strength had never been military, it was cultural. The Elari were known for their diplomacy, their art, their ability to mediate disputes that would otherwise erupt into bloodshed. They were not powerful, but they were respected. At least they had been. When the Dominion arrived, respect no longer mattered. The Dominion was not an alliance, it wasn't even a traditional empire, it was something colder, more absolute, a collective of species unified under a single doctrine, expansion through assimilation or annihilation. They did not negotiate, they did not compromise, worlds either joined them or ceased to exist. One by one, systems fell. Entire civilizations vanished within weeks. Fleets that once dominated sectors were crushed in days. The Dominion did not wage war like others. They overwhelmed, adapted, consumed. Every victory made them stronger. And eventually, they reached the Elari. The galaxy watched, but no one intervened. Some considered it tragic, others inevitable. A few debated sending aid, but the Dominion's advance was too fast, too overwhelming. Any attempt to defend the Elari would mean exposing themselves. So they did nothing. The Elari sent out distress signals anyway. Most went unanswered. But one reached humanity. It arrived not as a formal request, but as a fragmented transmission, voices layered over each other, desperate, fading. "We have no defense. They are already here. Please, if anyone hears." The message cut to static. In the halls of Earth's unified council, silence followed. For generations, their policy had been clear: no involvement in galactic wars, no exceptions. It had kept them safe, allowed them to grow without drawing attention. But now, something was different. The room filled with debate. "We cannot intervene, not now, not against them. If we act, we reveal ourselves. And if we don't, what does that make us? They are not our responsibility. They are sentient, they asked for help. They are already lost." The arguments circled, clashed, repeated. Strategy against morality, survival against principle. Then someone asked a simple question. What happens when the Dominion reaches us? That ended the debate. Because for the first time, humanity confronted a truth they had avoided for centuries. Staying out of the war did not mean the war would stay away from them. Within hours, a decision was made. For the first time in their history, humanity would intervene. Not cautiously, not symbolically, completely. The fleet that launched from human space was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, not because of its size, but because of its design. Where other species built ships for dominance, large, heavily armored, visibly intimidating, human ships were different, sleek, adaptive, efficient, built not just for combat, but for endurance, coordination, and rapid evolution in battle. They hadn't spent centuries avoiding war, they had spent centuries preparing for it. When the fleet arrived at the Elari home system, it was already burning. Dominion vessels filled the void, massive, angular constructs that dwarfed anything the Elari had ever fielded. Their weapons carved through orbital defenses with mechanical precision. Cities on the surface flickered and died as bombardments rained down. And then humanity arrived.
At first, no one noticed. Their ships slipped into the system's outer edges, silent, unassuming. No grand entrance, no declarations, just observation. Data flooded through the fleet, enemy formations, weapon patterns, communication frequencies. Within minutes, the entire Dominion battle strategy in the system was mapped, analyzed, and understood. Then the humans moved. The first strike didn't come from the main fleet. It came from nowhere. A Dominion command ship, positioned deep within their formation, simply stopped. Its systems failed simultaneously: propulsion, weapons, shields. Seconds later, it detonated from within. Confusion rippled through the Dominion ranks. Then it happened again and again. Invisible strikes, precise, surgical. Human ships didn't engage head-on. They moved through the battlefield like ghosts, appearing only long enough to disable critical targets before vanishing again. Their weapons weren't built for spectacle, they were built for effect. Where others fired volleys, humans removed functions. Engines failed, weapon systems shut down, entire ships went dark without a single visible impact. The Dominion adapted quickly, they always did, but humanity adapted faster. Every countermeasure the Dominion deployed was anticipated within minutes. Every shift in formation was met with an immediate response. It was as if the humans were not reacting to the battle, they were controlling it. For the first time in their expansion, the Dominion slowed. Then they began to lose. Elari survivors, hiding beneath their shattered cities, watched in disbelief as the skies changed. The relentless bombardment faltered. Dominion ships, once unstoppable, drifted powerless or broke apart under unseen attacks. Hope, something they had already buried, returned. But the battle was far from over. The Dominion did not retreat, they escalated. Reinforcements poured into the system, larger ships, heavier weapons, more aggressive tactics. The void filled with fire as they abandoned precision for overwhelming force. And this time, the humans didn't stay hidden, they met them directly. Human ships emerged from all sides, their formations shifting fluidly, almost organically. They didn't hold lines like traditional fleets. They moved as a network, each ship independent, yet perfectly synchronized. The first direct engagement shook the system. Human weapons ignited, not beams or projectiles, but something different, controlled distortions of space itself, collapsing sections of enemy hulls inward, tearing through defenses that had never been designed to withstand such attacks. Dominion ships retaliated with devastating force, and for the first time, human ships were hit. Explosions lit the void, fragments drifted into the darkness. But something unexpected happened.
The human fleet didn't falter. If anything, it became more dangerous. Every loss, every hit, every failure was instantly analyzed and shared across the entire fleet. Tactics evolved in real time. Weaknesses were corrected within seconds. They were learning in the middle of battle. The Dominion, for all their adaptability, had never faced an enemy like this. They were used to evolution over years, decades, not seconds. What had begun as a rescue turned into something far greater, a message. By the time the final Dominion ships withdrew from the Alari system, the battlefield was unrecognizable. Debris fields stretched across orbit. The once dominant fleet was shattered, forced into retreat for the first time in its history. And humanity remained. They didn't pursue. They didn't celebrate. They simply stayed, repairing what they could, assisting survivors, rebuilding orbital infrastructure with quiet efficiency. The Alari, those who remained, tried to understand what had happened. "Why?" one of them asked, their voice trembling through a translated channel. "Why would you risk yourselves for us?" The human representative paused before answering. Because no one else did. The transmission spread. Across the galaxy, species that had watched in silence now saw something they couldn't ignore. The Dominion had been stopped, not by the strongest empire, not by a grand alliance, but by the species that had refused to fight. And now everything had changed. For the first time in centuries, the balance of the galaxy shifted, not because humanity had won a battle, but because they had chosen to fight at all. And somewhere, deep within Dominion-controlled space, something new began. Not fear, calculation. Because the humans had revealed only one thing for certain. They had stayed out of galactic wars until they decided it mattered.